So forks are on-chain solutions for the upgrades you need. In other words, they are adjusting the protocol layer. Layer 1 is also known as the protocol layer. So you need to adjust the protocol layer. Okay, so we have many different types of forks, namely 3 main categories: the hard forks, soft forks, and temporary forks. A fork occurs when a blockchain diverges in 2 different paths. But when it diverges in 2 different paths, you can either have a hard fork, it's known as a hard fork, it can be known as a soft fork, and it can be known as a temporary fork. Well, let's start with a soft fork first. And a soft fork is when you have 2 different paths. So you have this one, and then all of a sudden you now have 2 routes. In the end, you might form one chain again. If not, you will become a hard fork. So how does this work? A soft fork is a tightening of the rules. So the consensus rules become more strict. So once more, when we're talking about a soft fork, out of these 3 forks, the rules become stricter. The best way to see that, for example, is that if you are a vegetarian and you want to eat in a restaurant, all of a sudden the restaurant became vegan. You can still eat at that restaurant as a vegetarian. The rules are more strict, but for you as a vegetarian, the meals served to you, the vegan meals, are still valid meals. So when you are, in this case, a node, the blocks served to you are still valid blocks. So for example, if you are used to 3 MB blocks and now the new blocks are 2 MBs and you accept everything till 3 MB, then it's still a perfectly fine valid block for you. So whether it's a 2 versus 3 MB or vegan versus vegetarian meal, same but different. So that's a soft fork. Well, take a wild guess. The hard fork is not a tightening of the rules, but it's a wider acceptance of the rules, or it's a softening of the rules. So more is allowed. So when we're talking about vegetarian, for example, if you're in a restaurant, somebody starts serving you meals with meat, for example. Those are not acceptable for you as a vegetarian. Or in blockchain related stuff, if somebody serves you a block bigger than 3 MB. If you accept 3 until the maximum of 3 MB blocks, and all of a sudden a new node or somebody else proposes a block bigger than 3 MB, you won't accept it. Just like the vegetarian won't accept a meat meal, you won't accept a bigger than 3 MB block. So a hard fork is a softener rule protocol, so there more is allowed in the new protocol, and the soft fork, it becomes stricter, so stuff is still allowed for you. A recap. So soft and easy, you can always become, or you will always remain a node, and a softening or tightening, tightening of the rules might have happened, but you still don't notice anything. So for example, you're still vegetarian, you still eat the meals there, only there is no egg, for example, in it. So in this case, you can still accept all the smaller blocks and you might not even notice a thing. That isn't an option when you are when you're confronted with a hard fork. When you're confronted with a hard fork, it's either choose, do I go for the vegetarian chain or do I go with the meat chain? You need to pick one or two. And what did I mean by this might be, or this eventually comes back to one chain again? So the improvement has been made. What I mean is that if people keep on serving you vegan meals, and all of a sudden everybody starts validating those vegan meals, they only accept vegan meals. All your orderings, all the blocks you deem valid, are not valid in their eyes. So the more people are slowly migrating towards that other chain, towards that other path, and slowly loosening your valid claim of your chain. So your chain will be, there will be less users, there will be less miners, and everybody will migrate towards the other chain. And why is that? Because you as a vegetarian can migrate to a vegan chain, but you as a vegan can't migrate to a vegetarian chain. Because for one, it is both valid, but for the other, the other chain isn't valid. And that's why slowly in a soft fork, people continuously keep moving back towards a chain. In Bitcoin's case, they have approximately, I think, 2016 blocks or 2 weeks or so. So when this happens, when a soft fork happens, it needs to be solved. The majority needs to be on one chain. I think it's 85%, I'm not sure, but I think I once saw that. 85% needs to be after 2 weeks in one chain to create a valid chain. Otherwise, you have forked, and then you now have 2 Bitcoin forks. And then, of course, you also have 2 funds in both chains, and then your wallet, if it supports the other chain as well, you can move your funds to the other chain if it's valuable, it all deems from the ecosystem. But we're talking about the tech here. Then the last category, the temporary fork, is an example of when 2 miners have a block at the same time and the mining race starts. One of the miners wins and the other valid chain becomes an invalid chain and the block becomes an orphan block. Why is it called an orphan block? Because it loses its parent block, because it didn't exist eventually and they choose the other chain. So 3 chains, 3 forks, hard fork, soft fork, temporary fork. A soft fork is backwards compatible, so you can always decide later to become vegan. A hard fork is not backwards compatible, so you either choose meat or you choose vegan. So no options there. And a temporary fork is just a minor race in the proof of work concept. It's mainly 2 categories plus an additional one. Okay, so that's all for now. You will see way better videos after this. So Antonopoulos has a very good one explaining forkology for newbies. Definitely watch that one. I think you already needed to watch it in level 2. If you might have skipped it, this is your second chance. Watch the Antonopoulos video and we will see you in the next course.